Hi! Welcome to another episode of The Crimson Fly, where you can check out the process of making the animated comic. My name is Colin SkipperWing Bird, and if you'd like a version of this video without the audio commentary, you can check out the links in the description below, or in the cards, or in the annotations when they appear on screen at the end of this video. Or just click on my face. There should be an annotation here now. Before we get started, today's music is Back Vibes, Rollin at 5 by Kevin MacLeod. Or MacLeod. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. If you can find a link to download it in the description below. So, on to the story. I'm trying to structure these videos a little more. That said, I'm not going to break the story down piece by piece because that's your job as the reader. So, what's going on? The younger wheelchair-bound kid is sneaking around trying to follow the older kid into the factory where they stumble onto a secret meeting. Dun dun dun! As far as the plot goes, it's pretty simple. Introduce some information, the kids sneaking around and following each other, a build-up of information, where is the older kid going? Can the younger one keep up without being spotted? And a climax slash punchline slash cliffhanger. Who is the older kid meeting and why do they need privacy? That's pretty much how comic strips and really pages and or scenes or puzzles for games work. You give your audience a set of information, build the tension, then release it with a sweet climax and or cliffhanger to get peeps to read the next page. In the case of this story, I was, and to be honest still am, a little worried about the lack of dynamic physical action, which through the animation is the main draw of the comic, would bore the readers, and that the tension would not be enough to keep readers around. I'm coming to realize, as I work on more and more strips in this vein, that I'm selling myself short a little bit. It's still a visual medium, so hopefully the art keeps people around, as well as the interactivity forcing the panels forward yourself to discover the next bit of information. Plus, as long as the main theme is still being conveyed, kids sneaking through in a secret meeting, and the plot continues to move forward, i.e. new information is presented that changes the story as it is integrated into and recontextualizes what the reader already knows, there's room for little jokes, like how ill-suited a wheelchair is towards sneaking around, or the visual gag of the gates already being open, but neither of our principal characters being self-aware enough to try that out. How about you guys? How do you deal with slow moments? Please leave it in the comments. So, on to techniques. Well, first and foremost, there's a lot of silhouettes in this strip. That's mostly because I wanted to both establish the spatial relationships between Wheelchair Kid and Mr. Mullet, and I didn't want their forms to get lost in detail when shrunken down, since the silhouettes are rather basic, and the characters aren't doing anything really crazy. The crappy thing about silhouettes, though, is that they're very easy to mess up, since most humans tend to have the same silhouette at a glance unless they are massively stylized. This isn't a major problem for Wheelchair, because they're in a wheelchair in this story, but for Super Bangs, I had to go out of my way to emphasize their lankiness, thanks to their boxy torso and spindly limbs, and the shape of their hair. As much grief as we give anime for relying on hair colors and styles as a shorthand for personality, there's a reason we do so. Hair is one of the most easily customizable features on the human body that you can modify without too much effort, excluding things like hair color and the like. Messy hair tends to indicate that the wearer doesn't care too much about their appearance, and if you're using your hair to cover your eyes, it indicates that you imply that you have something to hide, since you're hiding the windows to your soul. Also, tying back your hair indicates greater focus, since you're moving it out of your eyes for better vision. And of course, the dedication to keeping a shaved head indicates, well, dedication, since it's a conscious act that you have to keep maintaining if you're not prematurely bald, and so on and so forth. In the case of Magic Bangs, it gives his head a distinctive shape within this particular narrative with the little two tails and the back thing, which I could use to exploit in his silhouette. So I did. What do you guys think about silhouettes? Where have you seen them used really well or really poorly? Please leave it in the comments. The frustrating thing about silhouettes for animation is that since they're so simple, they're both very easy to mess up and easy to notice when they are messed up because they're so easy, they're so simple. Plus, when an artist who relies heavily on lines and shadow for their art, lineless art doesn't really come that easily to me, especially when I don't have interior line art to rely on, since, silhouettes don't have those. Luckily, this only applies to the final result and not the process. I use regular line art for my sketches and drew over the outlines very carefully using for the final frames. Unfortunately, while I am insanely fast at processes I am good at, like storyboarding or rough compositions and animations, I am, conversely, insanely slow at processes that I don't have as much fun, like detailed illustrations, animation cleanup, or dialogue. While roughing out the jokes in the panel, in panel 1 and 3 were incredibly easy, cleaning up the final result was a bit harder, though luckily I had my streamers to hang out with me. That's right, I stream the process of making the comic. You can find me on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/SkipperWing. I usually stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays and the weekends during the evening. Swing on by and say hi! So, other notes. At the beginning, you guys might have seen me looking up more reference, even though I already had the factory reference saved from before. That's because while I had decent exterior factory reference, I didn't have good interior factory reference to use, and hadn't thought to look it up earlier. So I did it here. I also included that particular search in the video to discourage the notion that artists magically, automatically know how to draw the things they need to, and to encourage anyone watching to get in the habit of looking up reference when needed, even for things you know intrinsically. Do you guys use reference? You should. Let me know in the comments. Also, one of the things I love about digital media is the ability to patch content. That the ability to patch content isn't restricted to video games. When I first posted the strip, none of the cleanup animation, visual sound effects, actual sound effects, or music had been implemented on time. However, I valued being on time above being finished, since readers like having a consistent schedule to follow and having some content to consume rather than none at all. So I finished the code and uploaded what I had, and even used the unfinished animation for the strip for the strip promotions, knowing that I could simply modify the post later and no one would ever know. Granted, this has dangerous applications. What if I draw something offensive or insensitive and then deny it later by changing or deleting the post? Well, there are ways of archiving those sorts of edits, but you know what I mean. That being said, I don't plan to do much editing aside from user interface updates, since fixing more than the UI, or the dialogue for that matter, is way too work intensive for an animated comic, especially redoing animations, and retroactive edits to the plot could derail the entire story. What do you guys think of applying patches to things that aren't video games? And that's it for today's strip. Please, if you like what you saw, please subscribe and turn on notifications, the little bell thing next to the subscription button, to keep seeing these videos. Also, don't forget to check out this video in its original interactive format, and please share this content with your friends. This is Colin SkipperWing Bird signing out, and I'll catch you peeps later.